Together, growing in faith, changing communities.
Together, growing in faith, changing communities. My dear brothers and sisters, I'd like us today to reflect on the Gospel of Luke, chapter 5, from verse 1 to verse 11. The first thing that speaks to me is Jesus going into the boat of Simon, and he starts to preach. But when he had finished preaching, therefore invites Simon, and he says to him, let us go to the deep. Let us move from the land. Let us go to the deep. Let us go to a place where you will rather not go. When last did you go to the deep? A place of hurt. A place of betrayal. A place of rejection. It may be a memory from the childhood. It may be a memory from a past relationship. It may be a place of failure. It may be one of those places that we don't talk about. The doors which we have closed and locked. The closets we never visit. The conversations we never have. And so the Lord is asking us to move from the normal, the mundane, the easy life. And he says, let us go to the deep. Let us go to that place which we normally push off. And as the Lord invites Peter, he invites each and every one of us today. And Peter just pushes back and he says, not today. I've been there. I don't want to go back. And so there seems to be this human reaction to run away from these places. From these moments that causes us so much pain. And for some, the wound is still fresh. Still oozing out of blood. It is still a touchy subject. And yet the Lord wants us to go there. He says, let's go to that place. Now I want to argue, dear brothers and sisters, is that when Jesus sees Peter and his friends, he probably can see failure in their eyes, in their faces. Because Peter will say, but we've worked hard all day long and we have nothing to show for it. Have you ever felt like a failure? Where you say, I've done my best. I've tried to work at this relationship. I've tried to be a good son. I've tried to be a good daughter. I've tried to be as supportive as I could have. What more did you expect or want from me? And so you could see the failure, the hurt in the eyes of Peter, who says, I've given everything for this. And he says, I've done it. But there's a turning point for me here. When Peter looks into the Lord, he says to him, at your word, I will lower the nets. Not that I want to do it, but because I trust you. At your word, I will let go. At your word, I will walk down that route. At your word, I will open the wounds. At your word, I will be vulnerable. At your word, I will sit and deal with the past hurt. In psychology, we argue and say, unless as a victim you deal with your hurt and pain, you are most likely to become a perpetrator. And I've seen this in my life, in the ministry. If I'm not at peace here, I'm not at peace here. There are people who speak and they utter words and their tongues are like razor. It's because they are not at peace within themselves. It's like the tin that you bit. The emptiest tin makes the loudest noise. And so often you find fighting that person, this situation, that situation. And so Augustine argues, he says, I have traveled the world to search for you, O God, O beauty so ancient and so ever new, and yet I left you right inside of me. How many of us do that? We go out searching for peace, for happiness. We do things wanting peace, and the problem is right inside. And so as he lowers the nets, he does not expect to catch anything. But a lot emerges. When you get a chance, I would like you to go and read the Gospel of John chapter 4. The story of a Samaritan woman. She goes to the well. She meets Jesus. Jesus says to her, give me something to drink. She looks at Jesus and she says, you have no bucket, and the well is so deep. A great number of biblical scripture scholars argue and say, what is she talking about? Is she talking about the well, as in the well, or is she talking about herself as the well? And some of us would argue both make sense, but I tend to listen more to the one she's talking about herself. The hurt is so deep that if I was to go there, I will stay depressed. I will live with anxiety. You know, many of us are in that space. The well is so deep. The hurt is noticeable. But as Jesus allows Peter to throw the nets, so much comes out. A lot emerges. And my dear brothers and sisters, a great number of us are carrying the load. We've suppressed it. We've put it under the carpet. We've ignored it. We've brushed it off. We've told ourselves that I'm strong, that I can do it. But there's so much pain. To a large degree, a great number of us are broken, if not all of us. And so as these things emerge, as they come out, they cannot handle it. The nets are at the point where they break, where they tear off and they realize the center does not hold any further. The person I used to go for moral compass is lost. The person I looked up to for support is no longer there. The woman or the man I admired has changed. The world as I've seen it in the past is not the same. What do you do when your world falls apart? So he realizes that so much has come out and I don't have the strength to deal with it. And some people will just give up and give in and sit there. But Peter does something absolutely amazing. He calls for help. Something that is called a lifeline. You know, when someone is drowning, you throw a lifeline at them and you reel them in. And that's what Peter does. He calls their friends and he says, I'm drowning here. This is just too much for me to do. This is too much for me to deal with. Peter is with his brother Andrew, James and John. They come and they help them. Do you have someone like that? Do you have someone you can call 12 o'clock midnight, who will not be irritated, who will pick up the call, who will say, what can I do? Do you have someone who's willing to listen without making a judgment? Do you have someone who loves you enough to care for you?